Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kvetchfest. I'm Jen,
And I'm Debbie.
and today we're talking about moving away from your family or your friends and how that impacts your family and dynamics or loss of community, all the things that come up when you move away for whatever reason that may be, whether it's financial or career or just because you want to, whatever it comes up, or if you're moving to be closer to family after being away from them. We're going to talk about how our relationship is within all that and how my mom and we both live far apart and how that impacts our relationship too. So I moved away to go to college when I was 18, and I didn't think I was going to do that. I thought I was probably going to stay close to home in some capacity, but I ended up moving about a 6 hours drive to Arizona and then a 2 hour van ride to the airport and then a 2 hour flight. So it was a schlep to get to me. It was small town living. For me, that experience really helped me grow into myself and gave me independence, where I learned how to navigate all the young adult things that you're navigating when you're going to school and learning how to talk to people and how to stand up for yourself and how to have relationships outside of your family. And I feel like the best thing you instilled in me, Mom, was how to talk to the bank on the phone when they would overcharge me or when I overdrafted. I did not put up with that. As an 18-year-old, I was sassy. I said, "No, can you please reverse that charge? Thank you. It won't happen again." It happened again many more times. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, I think.
All the years of you talking on the phone to I don't know, who
Oh,
knows who
yeah.
you were talking to. But
I was talking to, in my past life, I was talking to vendors, I'm sure.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you put
Yeah.
your foot down on those phone calls, so I think I learned a lot.
Wow. Okay.
You're like, I had no idea. What are you talking about? No, but
Uh,
seriously, you taught me how to talk to people like that and just stand up for myself, because I think at the end of the day, you were like, this is the last time I'm going to do it for you, Jen. I'm not going to call the bank on your behalf anymore. You got to figure out how to deal with this.
I think that's true. I think I gave you and your brother like 3 tries, and I said, okay, that's it. Now it's your turn.
Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah,
I
I know.
sometimes I would have a script that I write down.
Oh, absolutely. I still do that. I write down
Really?
what I want to say, just, yeah, because they never know, first of all, if you're going to remember. And
Hmm.
second of all, you don't want your emotions to get the better of you. So if you could stick to a script, you can stay, relatively calm.
Hmm.
And now that's different for me than it was when I was younger. I think
Yeah.
when I was younger, I was a little bit more headstrong, but sweet. But
That's
now
a
I'm
good
like,
combination.
yeah, but now it's like I just let them do well, I learned over the years, just let them do all the talking before you step in because you just might get what you want if you just shut up. And not that I was trying to get something I wasn't entitled to. I was just trying to whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, I feel like I have learned to ask people how they're doing and how their day is going, and then you get way better
yes.
service because you're having that connection before you say, "Hey, here's the problem. Can you fix it for me? Thank you." So,
Yes, and always
yes.
write down somebody's name because
Oh
once a
yeah.
person hears you say their name, they're way more interested in helping you because you have now created a connection in that moment.
Exactly.
So yes, so I'm glad I was helpful in part of your individuating. You said at the beginning you weren't expecting to move, and I feel the same way. I didn't think you were going to move out of state to go to school either. I was surprised by that. Not
Really.
overly surprised, but yeah, and I didn't want to be the kind of parent at the time who was going to sway you. So I just kind of held my breath as to what was going to happen. But
Hmm.
you were very clear with me at that time that you had no intention of going to any school locally that you might run into people that you went to high school with. or before, because you had been in such a small bubble. Not that you went to a high school that didn't have a lot of kids. You did. You went to a large high school,
I went to a
but
small city for
the
a high school. It was thousands of children together
right,
for 4 years.
because yeah, yeah, but I think that right, but not only that, your middle school years um were longer
Yeah.
because your middle school was a K through 8,
Hmm.
and those 90 kids basically all matriculated together that whole time. And I think
Yeah.
even if you still like them and are still friends with them now, or some of them, you told me straight up, I'm not going to have that experience. So I knew that some of the colleges near us were not going to happen. And so that was, I had to keep my mouth shut,
Yeah.
basically. We did my level of engagement for you leaving and moving away was pros and cons lists.
Yes, I really remember that because I did
Yes.
write a pros and cons list for two of the colleges that I was really struggling with on how to choose. Because one was
Right.
in Los Angeles and one was in Arizona. That was a
Right.
huge decision for me. I had no idea what to do.
Right.
Very different paths, too. Yeah.
And I know at one point you wanted me to make that decision. I'm like, "Oh,
Oh, yeah.
heck no. I don't want you to
Please.
resent me the rest of your life." So you can make the decision, and if it doesn't pan out, then you can always change your
Or
decision
resent myself.
or resent yourself. And I don't have much control over that.
No.
But yeah, I didn't want, so we made a pros cons. And I think
Yeah.
ultimately it was the right decision. But for
Hmm.
me, it was a huge, you think you individuated. I had to individuate again in a different way from when I was a teenager.
Oh.
Now I was a parent, not having the person that essentially we were a twosome for a good 5 years,
Hmm.
because your brother had already left to go to school.
Right.
And so it was just the two of us for a while until you graduated and went off to school. So I
Hmm.
remember my stepdad saying to me, "Well, you're going to have to launch yourself." And I'm like, I've already launched myself several times during my lifetime. I really don't want to launch myself again. But
Yeah.
I mean, that was my visceral, childish reaction. What are you talking about? I don't want to do
Right.
that. But ultimately, I had to, because I didn't have that social base that I had had, and I needed to find people. And I couldn't continue to rely on some of my closer colleague relationships because they have lives too, and I didn't want to
Hmm.
constantly impart myself onto them. So
Right.
there were weekends where I didn't know really what to do with myself when I was working, because I worked that whole time, of course, until recently. And so it was difficult not to, it was like, for me, it felt like empty nester on steroids
Yeah.
somehow.
Really.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because I had already been a single parent, not by choice,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And now I was like a single person who wasn't actively parenting. And not that it
Yeah.
wasn't by my choice, it was your choice not to like live at home and go to school, or even live in a dorm close by and go to school. You wanted to get the heck out of Dodge. You were very adamant. I'm not going to school in this area that I grew up in. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
guess I
okay.
had some trauma or something. Something.
Yeah.
I just did not connect with people down there, and I think I just had a really hard time thinking that I would be happy or find my people. When you're 18, you're not thinking about like, oh, I'm gonna make new connections in the new college that I'm going to. All of the colleges that I wanted to go to were huge. I didn't want to go to them, but and I honestly didn't even get into. I got into them, but I had to take prerequisites, which I thought was bananas and a waste of money. Did I just say bananas?
That's
I meant to
okay.
say
You
bananas.
did. I like it. I like bananas.
All right.
Yeah, it
That's an
seems
accident.
appropriate.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, even more ridiculous sounding good. Yeah, I just felt like, gosh, taking prerequisites is something that I'm already paying for college. I don't want to pay for classes that I already did for free in high school.
Right. Although you did have a leg up with a few of your classes because you had taken some uh, honors or
AP
AP
honors,
classes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was helpful.
Yeah, I was stubborn.
But
I was very stubborn,
yeah.
I think, as a teenager, that kind of time in my life where I just was like, get me out of here, get me to a school that's smaller, more personalized. I didn't see how going to a big college was going to be the route for me. I just think that I think going to a big public school, I didn't feel seen there. And then it just seemed like a nightmare to go from like a big high school to then a bigger college situation. And I still wasn't going to get that personalized attention that I think I really was craving at that time in my life, like some solid mentorship from other adults or other peers, because I ended up going to college where some students were in their, early or mid 20s, so were adults, but in that context they were still like peers, I guess, but they had lived life a little bit more and had maybe gone to a community college and then dropped out and then, traveled and then decided, oh, now I'm going to go back to school. So I was seeing people from all walks of life doing the college thing and figuring out what they wanted from their life. And so it kind of made me think about things differently too, which I think I was already thinking about at that age. Like, do I even want to go to school right now? But you were pretty adamant that I not take a gap year, which
Yes.
I disagreed with at the time, and maybe I still do, but I think you wanted me to keep the inertia going. And I think
Yes.
I needed a breather, but I didn't. I was also scared too because it's like, what do you do for a gap year? It's not like we came from a place of like, oh yeah, go travel, Jen. Go
Right.
explore. We have the means to do that. We didn't.
Well,
So,
we
yeah,
probably could have arranged for that.
sure.
Totally. Yeah. Because you did some travel while you were in
Hmm.
school, but yeah. But I think that I was afraid of the momentum being lost because knew of people who the gap year became gap years and they never returned.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think that how you and I differ, and I think it has a lot to do with when you're born. And look, there's going to be people who were way more experimental and people who thought more out of the box. I was more of a, like, I think I've said this probably more than once, that I was a very linear thinking person with a satirical irreverent side that did not show up when I was doing the things that I thought I was needing to do. Within those things, I was like that, but I still went from point A to point B. So it
Hmm.
never occurred to me, and I think it's because of who I was raised around. I was raised around academics, so it never really occurred to me that I wasn't going to go to a large university,
Oh, okay.
right? I
Yeah.
never questioned the fact that I wasn't going to be in a lecture hall with 300 people. I think I kind of liked that. It didn't bother me that I was going to have to take notes and study and do that because that was a comfortable state for me to be in,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And I think for you it was different. Your personality questioned it more, or maybe that wasn't the way your brain worked.
Yeah.
And so I tried not to say things like, what are you talking about? You don't want to be in a lecture hall. I really tried not to say those things.
Yeah, I think you did a
I
good job.
just, yeah, I just let you sort of, figure out what path, and then I
Hmm.
was going to support that. So the fact that, I mean, I'm proud of you in that you elected to not do what could be considered more ordinary
Hmm. More
and
mainstream.
yeah, and
Hmm.
do something that was different. Where you went to school, it was different from what my experience. I
Very
didn't
different.
have, experiential. I didn't have an experiential university experience.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't have a
If I had,
kayaking class?
no, and I didn't have a up in the mountains
Trip for 3 weeks?
survival, right? And I wasn't taken out on excursions and then have class time afterwards to reflect. That's
Yeah.
not how it worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had experiences in labs and stuff like that that were sort
Yeah.
of hands-on. But you had and you also went to a school where it was much smaller professor ratio to student ratio, and you got to know, I think you got to know the faculty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I
where
agree.
that wasn't something that I got to really do, but unless I wanted to, unless I sought the professor out, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't, that wasn't something I considered. So I think that it was probably a really good thing, probably for both of us, because if you had not gone away, we probably would have been joined at the hip in what might not have been such a healthy way.
I agree. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
was
And
already
I did,
calling you every day anyway, moving.
well,
Yeah. So
yeah, well, I sort of asked for that.
you did, and I was okay with it. There was some moments where I was like, okay, I'm doing stuff, but most of the
Yeah, no,
time,
all I wanted was, look, the trauma in our family spills over into the
and
everyday normality of life,
absolutely.
right?
Hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
and at least it did for me. I mean, there are people deal with death differently than other people,
Hmm.
but I was already felt super vulnerable.
Hmm.
So I wanted to hear from you and your brother when you went away to school. And
Hmm.
your brother was quickly cut that off. And I'm going to say this, and it
Hmm.
probably isn't PC, but because he was male,
Hmm.
I didn't find him to be as vulnerable in situations, which is ludicrous. But
Yeah.
that's the denial that many of us have, that just because you're taller or you're a male, you're less apt to run into things. And you were not that. You were the complete opposite of that at the time,
Right.
and still are, basically. And
Hmm.
I just wanted, all I needed to know is that you were home.
Yeah.
Even if you
Yeah.
weren't home,
Yeah.
I needed to be able to sleep.
Yes. Totally. I know.
So I
Yes.
just wanted to know. I mean, I went through my own ridiculous anxiety. Like, how
I
do I
can
know that
imagine.
that's Jen really texting me?
Right. I know we
You
never put
know,
in like a code or something that you
no,
would know it's
I think
me,
we
but
kind of did,
yeah.
but yeah. So it was different, and
Hmm.
he put the kibosh on it. He said, "I'm not calling you every night, and I'm going to try to call you every week, but don't count on that." And you, on the other hand, went along with it because I think you
Yeah.
needed it too. I
Oh, yeah.
think you were checking up on me as much as I was checking up on you.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yes,
because I
totally.
remember that one time I went on a date and I turned my phone off because I was in the theater, and
Hmm.
we were talking after the theater was over, and so my phone was off for, I don't know, 4 hours at least, and I got into my car and I turned my phone on and it went off like a slot machine. Ding, 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 ding. I'm like, what's going on? And everybody, you had contacted all these people to find out where the heck I was. And oh my gosh,
I
it was so
know.
funny.
And that's
So
like
that was
maybe the fifth time that I did that. So that wasn't even the first time that I did something like that,
okay.
where you didn't.
Maybe so.
I mean, oh my
Yeah,
God.
pick up
I
right
mean,
away.
I did that when we were living in the same town. I mean, yeah, so that's my
Yes.
anxiety.
Yeah.
I was like
Sure.
the
Yeah.
community organizer of where's my mom? Find her for me.
It's like, where's my phone?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I think that particular, from what I understand, and maybe I'm wrong now, well, my memory, if memory serves me correctly, that one night was like, okay, now you understand why I want to know where you are.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the ultimate
Yeah.
thing,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so being at a distance is difficult. You have to
Hmm.
just, you have to ease into it, and you just have to be happy that the person's where they want to be. And you hope to be able to connect at certain times. But since your brother was closer, his college was closer, it was in the same state, but it was in a different area, he came home more often,
Yeah.
whereas you didn't come home as often. I think
Yeah.
you
Well,
liked
it's
it where
funny
you were a
because
lot.
yeah, I did. That's true. Yeah.
And you had created friendships there where he had still had friendships where he lived. So
Right.
he wanted to come back to reconnect with those friendships.
Right.
Whereas you didn't feel the need for that as much.
I didn't have many
Yeah.
friends from that time in my life to go back to, really. I mean, I did
Right.
have a few, but I didn't really stay in touch. Or I didn't really, I had close friends throughout living and growing up, but it's like then just kind of life happens and it kind of peters out. Or my stronger connections were made during, yeah, my college time. That's
Sure.
where I feel like I found more of my people. So I think it is good ultimately that I did move away. It's still really hard to still make a choice every day to not live near you. For me, as I'm in my mid 30s, I mean, come on, that's the truth for me. It's still really hard to be away from your, well, for me, because we have a good relationship and because and same with my brother, it's like, I like being around you too. Not everyone can say that, but I like our
Right.
family.
No.
So
Yeah.
it's easier for me to be like, yes, I want to move back there. And at the same time, it's also harder to be like, well, I won't be happy there. So I have to make a choice to not live there. And that's hard too. Or could I be happy? This is something that I always think about too. It's like, well, what would make me happy? Would it be happy because I'm close to family? And what would my life look like there because of that? Or do I just travel home more? And we have all these great connections now where you can use technology and all of that to stay in touch. But it doesn't change the fact that you only see someone a couple times a year. And that's really devastating when you think about the big picture of it, where it's like, oh, that's really kind of heartbreaking. How do I get out there more, like every 3 months or every, when it's like, but traveling is hard and it's expensive and it's just a struggle to do that frequently. But it takes a toll. So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to be the only one out of state for the most part who's like coming in and visiting everybody. And the pressure is on me to maintain those relationships in some sense because everyone's there and I'm the only one not there. So I have to like, that's like the sacrifice I'm making. So it's like a financial sacrifice because I have to pay for it. And then also an emotional sacrifice because I am away, but I'm the one that has to come in more frequently just because it's easier on everyone. At least that's how I see it. But it's like, oh, I want people to come up and visit me and see what my life is like up here and feel like they care about that and that too. And I'm not saying you don't do that because you absolutely do. You visited me everywhere I've ever lived. So that's wonderful, and I'm so glad because it's an experience that I get to share with you, and I love being able to share all the different lives I've had wherever I've lived, and that's been really special for me because it's a big part of my life is connecting with people and showing you my life, and I want to see your life too. So I'm glad we still get to do that even though we're far apart, and that we make the time to be in each other's lives even though we're far apart.
Yeah, I'm glad we can do that too, and that we have the privilege of doing that as well. Um, when you say you're the only one out, you mean in our immediate family, because we have extended
Hmm.
family that also don't live necessarily in proximity to us. But yeah, it's tough because now that I'm not working, the question is, do I move? Like, should I
Right.
move where you are and be closer to where you are?
Hmm.
And that's difficult because then I'm leaving other family that live near me,
Right.
right? And a
Hmm.
community of people that I've developed.
Hmm.
But I think that ultimately, I think people like to be around their family as
Hmm.
much as possible, even if they have a pretty strong friend, not fan base, friend
Same
base.
thing, right?
I guess
Friends are your
so. They are
fans, right?
fans. Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, that's the dilemma of getting older and now having that's a good thing to be able to have the choice. Then what do you
Hmm.
do with that choice?
I know, it's
And the
so
odd thing
tough.
is, yeah, the odd thing is that once you start thinking about, oh, I think I want to leave, all of a sudden where you live seems really good.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah, you go, oh no, I don't
You
think I
don't,
want to leave this, or I really like
yeah.
how I hung the picture on the wall, or this is the scenery around here is really nice. Maybe I don't want, and so
Hmm.
it's a hard thing to do. I just guess I would
Hmm.
go with the adage that well, it's my adage. I don't, it's not a real adage, but don't follow people because they might move, and then what do if you
Well,
follow
yeah.
them?
I'm having this conversation with my partner right now because it's like whatever choice we make, whether we stay where we are or move somewhere else, we have to make that choice for ourselves. And the hard part is community is such a big part of that choice, right? It's like it's not just your friends, it's your barber, it's your, the people you pass on the street that are familiar to you and you see them, or the same barista you go see, or who all these people make up those choices, even if they seem inconsequential. For me, they're important. And I think for so many people, it's important. How do you choose to let go of that? And how do you really make a choice for yourself despite what you might be sacrificing? Because, yes, you can make friends in new areas and you can create families in new areas and all of that, but you're still always going to leave something behind or sacrifice something for the move. And it's hard. It's hard to choose exactly. Like we have to make a choice that at the end of the day, no matter who's left in the city that we live in, it's still good for us to be there. And that's a hard thing to do. It's really hard to plant roots, I think. For me, especially if you're thinking about buying a house or really planting roots, it's like, ooh, is this really the right choice? But I've come across something recently that has been resonating with me, which is not worrying about if it's the right choice, but instead reframing it. It might not be the right choice, but how do you make the choice right for you?
Mm.
So kind of like that reframe because it's less pressure of making this right choice and more about, okay, whatever choice we do make, let's make it right for us. Let's make it right for me. Let's make it right for you instead of, yeah, kind of wondering if the choice that we're making is the best because it might not be, but it doesn't mean that it has to be permanent either. So there's ways that we can try all these different things and if we don't like it, you move back or whatever. But it's time and money and energy and all of that. So it's not just nothing. It's not just a throwaway thing. It's a huge decision. And I found that the decision about moving becomes bigger and bigger the older you get because I think in my teens and 20s, it's like, okay, throw my stuff in a box and my stuff's in a storage unit and okay, I'll just go drive down and get that and I'll ship those boxes to myself and have a friend go pick it up. It's not like I had a lot of stuff it's not even that I had more energy back then. It was just different ties. And I think when you get older, you start to really get comfortable and familiar with your things and with the place you live and with the community you've built and the furniture you have. And it's like, I don't really want to get rid of that. I like that thing. And I guess we could put it in storage, but that's a waste of money. Or, you know what I mean? It's just like all these things kind of add up. And it's not even the material items really. It's the weight of getting older and realizing like all the things that you would have to do to change your life. And that's just a really hard thing to do. I'm all for spontaneity and I could pick up and move tomorrow because that's my personality in a lot of ways. But it's also like, well, you have cats. So it's just like, it's not just yourself you're moving anymore. It's your partner, it's your cats, it's all these things that go into a huge decision. So it's complicated and it's really hard. And every day I'm always wondering and reconsidering, like, gosh, I love where I live, but should I move back to my family? And it's hard to live in that place all the time. So I have to always tell myself, like, well, you're making a choice for you, and that's okay to do that. And your family understands, and you stay connected with them through all the other means, and you go visit them, and like that's the compromise, right? It's not an easy compromise, but it is one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think that I'm going to go from the end to the beginning, if that makes sense. I think first of all that no matter where you live, whether you're living close to family or apart from family, you have your day-to-day routine life that doesn't always allow you to see family. But what's nice about knowing that you're close to family is that if you wanted to hop over, you could hop over. And I think that that's something that can't happen if you're miles and miles apart. I will put a little parenthesis in here and say I do know mothers and fathers, mostly mothers, who absolutely broadcasted to their children, broadcast to their children, what is that ED always happening? That they really didn't want them to move far away from them. Like an hour was it. Anything over
Hmm.
an hour, we're not talking about it.
Yeah.
And I never felt that I could, that number one, that I wanted to have that power, and number two, that I could even make that demand. I think that's ridiculous because, first of all, I didn't want that demand made on me. But
Hmm.
I understand that some people realize the enormity of having family far apart, and so they put that demand on because maybe it was put on them and it worked out and they like it, and so they want
Hmm.
that to happen in future generations. I didn't I never felt that I was the right person to be able to tell another person how they should live their life, even if they were my offspring, right? Because I wouldn't have wanted my parents to say to me, well, maybe I would have, I don't know, but I don't think I would have wanted them to say, we don't want you moving out of state while we're in this state,
Right.
right? Because they themselves moved away from
I was
there.
gonna say your parents. I mean, yeah, your mom
Yeah, so the
moved.
whole yeah, so the whole thing started with my parents. Well, it wasn't just them, but what happened was my family was in New York
Hmm.
and on the East Coast, and the part of my mother's family decided to move to the West Coast. And she decided to go along and do it too. And I was like 2 at the time, so no, I was 4 at the time. So what was I going to say about it? I
Right.
went with where my parents were, right?
Yeah.
And they sold everything they had. Darn it, they had such really cool mid-century modern stuff.
Oh, I bet.
And I know. And they moved to the West Coast, and my mother was basically at a distance from her brother and some of the other cousins. And that was what she wanted. I don't think she wanted to be away from her parents.
Hmm.
I really don't think she wanted to make a life without them being close by. And
Yeah.
so, of course, she was married. So my father left his family and also moved to the West Coast. And he was separated from his brother for their entire lifetime.
Yeah.
My uncle is still alive, but my father is not. And so they didn't see each other very much during
Hmm.
those years. So that was a choice they made. I never heard them say they regretted the choice,
Hmm.
but I know at times it must have been maybe privately difficult for them.
Right. Did your mom ever talk about what that was like for her? Because, I mean, moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, that's huge. That's
It's a big
a
move.
life-changing move.
Uh huh. It
That's
is.
almost like moving to a different country in some ways. I mean, it is. It's just a big
Yeah,
move. Did she ever talk
right.
to you about what she left behind?
Well, I think mostly her brother, because they were not close in age, but they were close in relationship to one another. She was the
Hmm.
younger, and he was really a mentor to her. And I think that he was also a protector. And that's why when her parents decided to move, her brother said, "Why are you going? You don't have to go." But I think he wasn't enough of what she needed
Mm.
to stay. So
Yeah, it's
and so
tough.
there's part of me that kind of wishes they had stayed in on the East Coast, because I
Hmm.
feel an East Coast sensibility, and when I go and visit and I still have family there, I feel a sort of interesting familiarity.
Hmm.
But in fact, somebody said to me just the other day, "Oh, well, you've been here since you were 4, so you're really native." I didn't like that when that person said that to me, because I have a
Hmm.
really entrenched Eastern sensibility,
Hmm.
because I was raised with all the people that
Right.
were in on the East Coast for most of their adult lives.
Right.
So I think that I don't consider myself native to anywhere from but where I was born,
Right.
honestly,
Sure.
even though I've been most of my life here. I think that so that part of me wishes they hadn't moved, just for the sake that I have that feeling. And then there was another move.
Right. I think it's so fascinating that both sides of my family, you were born in Brooklyn, your mom and dad moved to the West Coast, and then after my dad's parents did the same thing. They were also East Coasters who also immigrated back to, or not back to, but to the West Coast as well.
Yes.
So they also left their, well, some of their family came. A lot of their families came too, which I find fascinating. That's like not something, I just find it so fascinating that both sets decided to move to the West Coast. And not only that, but so many of their family members also moved with them,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is kind of unheard of today. I mean, I think a lot of families probably still do that. But for that time, 1955 and then 1961, to make that move, I think there's probably a lot of reasons and personal reasons that those families did that. But then to have like siblings and cousins and parents also move with their kid or their kid moving because their parents moved. I mean, that's just something that I don't think is very common necessarily in today's moving climate.
Yeah, well,
So yeah,
maybe it was easier back there, maybe less expensive. I know it's all relative. My parents came out from the East Coast on train by train.
right.
We didn't fly, we went by train, which I'll never that experience on the train is indelibly printed into my brain. My experience not recognizing my maternal grandmother at the train
Mhm.
station, and I remember her reaction to that because
Mhm.
I had been apart from her for 6 months and I was only 4. So
Mhm.
that was difficult. So okay, so I'm here, and then not only do I'm here, but then I moved to a different part of here,
Right.
away from where I grew up from, or in,
Mhm.
and that has been an interesting experience because I'm still, especially with Facebook, I'm still connected with people I grew up with who I've not spent very much time with since I was in my late teen years because I moved to another community away from them. And
Yeah.
not that it's so far away, but away enough where you start working and raising families and you lose complete, attachment. And so a part of me is sad that I don't
Mhm.
have that everyday possibility of running into people I went to school with or
Right.
calling somebody up that I went to school with. And I think it bubbles up even more because I think I mentioned that I'm almost going to my 50th high school reunion. Very quickly, it's coming up. And how a lot of the people that have stayed in the area will know each other, have run into each other, or have had mini reunions throughout
Mhm.
the last 10 years since our 40th reunion. And I have not had that, except for I've had these sort of social media connections here and there. So there's two factions where I felt saddened that my parents left I didn't think about this until I got older and went back to the
Right.
East Coast and thought, "Oh wow, this really feels right to me." And I
Mhm.
didn't get to have that experience. And now being moving from where they planted us to somewhere else because my parents again moved and I followed them. Well, I had to.
So
I
you
was
did
still
what
being
your mom did.
supported. Right, because I was still being supported by them,
Mhm.
right? Even
Mhm.
though I had people around say you don't need to do that, you're almost 18, you can do what you want to, and I just
Mhm.
felt like, "Oh, you don't leave your family." It's not like they're going thousands of miles away. They're just going a certain length of time away
Mhm.
and a smaller length of time and a smaller distance, so I'll go. And
Mhm.
honestly, if I didn't go, you wouldn't be having a podcast and I wouldn't be joining you right now. So,
True.
because my
Yes.
whole my whole adult life wound up being wrapped around the area in which I live in now,
Right. Mhm.
right? Yeah. So I think it's amazing that my parents decided to leave their parents. And mind you, we're not talking about people that were very mature. We're talking about a 23 and a 24-year-old
Right.
with a 4-year-old kid. And maybe that's why,
Yeah.
because they were young
Mhm.
and maybe not
Thinking
ready
things
to,
through. No.
right,
No,
or
not think.
completely
Yeah.
wanting to launch away. Probably my mom Didn't want to
Yeah.
completely launch away from her mother.
Yeah. But that must have
Right.
been a big deal for your dad to move from his family too. I mean, did he ever talk about that with you?
Never.
He was not really an open guy, is what I'm getting.
I think he would have been if I had asked, but honestly, I never thought to ask.
Really? Wow.
I don't
Uh-oh.
think I did.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I did. I don't think I did.
And you don't
No,
talk
I think
to,
I
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I don't talk to who.
Well, his brother.
That's interesting. We have over the years talked and tried to make some connections of locations and relationships and that kind of stuff. But I
Yeah.
don't think he tried to come here,
Oh.
and that was what he tried to do, but it didn't work out for him, and he stayed
Hmm.
on the East Coast. So it wasn't like he wasn't going to come.
Yeah.
He tried, and it just didn't, it wasn't happening for
Hmm.
various reasons. But yeah. So no, I don't think I've ever full out talked about that.
Fascinating. Yeah, because I mean, I think it's kind of wild that I don't live near family. And what does that say about me? No, I'm kidding. But I mean, it's something I always think about too, where it's like, oh, I'd like to just drive down for Saturday brunch or go
Mm-hmm.
visit my brother and whatever. It's so much easier if you're within an hour of someone. So it's a huge sacrifice that I'm always like, is it the right sacrifice or is it the, but yeah, it's tough. It's one of those things that at the end of the day, you still have to make the choices for you and then build your life around the choices you make and make it work. And phone calls and FaceTimes and all of that texting. It's a great way to stay connected. It's not the same, obviously, as proximity, but I do find it fascinating about all of this, the moving and how our families moved and how you met my dad and like all these different things that are because our family took up a big move. Both sides of it. It's really
Right.
interesting to me. And I mean,
Right.
there's so much of that. I think people are always moving all the time, constantly because of political
Yes.
reasons, financial, I mean, all of that, right? A war. I mean, there's so many reasons people move and continue to move, and they have to, and they don't have choices. So it's a privilege to be able to have a choice and to always be thinking, should I move back? Or that's a privilege that I have. And it's a privilege that I got to move several times in my life to different areas that I chose to be in. But yeah, I just think it's so interesting how the dynamics of our ancestry, they had to move too.
I was just thinking the same exact
Were
thing that
you?
you were
Yeah.
thinking. Oh
On
yeah.
the same wavelength, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Because I'm wondering, see, it's a crapshoot. It can go one of two ways. Either you leave a place because of danger
Hmm.
or prejudice,
Hmm.
and you don't ever want to leave the place you came to, or you already have it inside of you and generationally that you can make moves because you've already done the move. It can
Hmm.
go either way, and surely, of course, my family and my dad's family, my mom and my dad, I guess I should say, both of their families came from Eastern Europe here for obvious reasons
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
transplanted themselves and on the East Coast, which so many Jews did at the time,
Right.
and some left the next generations and
Hmm.
reestablished themselves in other situations. I mean, my father took a job out of state again when I was in middle school. Not this was the
That's right.
first time he took a job out of state, but it was the second time that he was willing to make another move out of state. And
Right.
I think he just wanted to succeed and better himself.
Right. Hmm.
Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him, not because he didn't do the right thing, but the company wasn't doing the right thing.
Right.
So he came back. But
Hmm.
my mother went too, and I think it's because they had already done that big move. So this was like, okay, we've done it before. We can do it again. And I
Hmm.
think my mom was gregarious, and well, I know she was,
Right.
and she was social. And I
Yeah.
don't think she was worried about making friends. But when we moved to where we moved to, it became very clear that there wasn't going to be a lot of people who were like us
Them. Yeah.
there.
Them. You. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was really not a good fit for her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in a weird way, it worked out for her not to have to
Right.
stay there.
Not to have to stay there. Which
Yeah.
is, I think I
Yeah.
have your mom's characteristics of being gregarious too, because making friends is something I'm okay at. I don't,
Right.
I have anxiety, of course, and we all have a little bit of social anxiety, or a lot of it, depending on who you are.
Right.
But making friends is something that I love doing. So moving for that reason, or that part of the move wouldn't scare me
Correct.
necessarily. It's just the
Right.
work that goes into it that does. It just takes time to establish yourself and build your community up and build your career, whatever it is, anywhere you go nowadays. It's not something you have to keep in mind. But so, do you know if, so my dad's side, I mean, do you know what generation they immigrated from Italy?
Oh, that's a good question. I really don't. That's a question you would have to ask
Ask.
them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
I
it
can't
wasn't
off
my
the
grandparents' parents, but their parents, perhaps.
Yes. Yes. Well,
Okay.
your grandfather, your grandfather, your paternal grandfather's family was direct. I think your your great grandparents on your dad's side were not. Does that make sense? Did I say that
Yes.
correctly?
Mm-hmm.
So, did I? Okay.
I think.
So, yeah. Yeah. So okay, so let me say it differently. So, your grandmother's parents, I think I said that wrong. Your grandmother's parents were not direct from Italy,
Mm-hmm.
but your grandfather's parents were.
Oh, interesting. So half of me is like third generation
Right. If I am correct on
Italian
that.
American.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
And then on your side, I am fourth or third generation Jewish.
Well,
Uh,
my mother's grandmother came direct.
your mom's grandma.
Right.
So
My
that
great
is,
grandmother.
we can do math. How
So that
many
would be your
people is
third.
that?
That would be your great grandmother. So
Then
that
I'm fifth.
maybe, yeah. I don't know. Can we do this later?
Don't ask us to do math on a podcast. What are we
Well,
doing?
it's not the math. I'm trying to go through
Need to do a tree,
a
family
pretend
tree.
tree real quick in
Yeah,
my mouth. So I know people who are listening will can comment and say, "All right, people, this is who you
yeah.
are.
Get it together.
Help us!" Yeah,
Someone
because
out
I
there
didn't
want to create
think.
our family tree? Thank you.
Yes, yes, that's what I'm supposed to be doing in my retirement. By the way,
That is,
that's
what
a
are you
thing.
doing? What are you doing a podcast? You should be out there
I
doing
know.
the
We do
fam
my family tree. I can do. I can. I'm multi talented.
talented. Yeah.
If that's a talent, I'm just that was
We're we can do multiple things at once. Yeah.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to
Oh my
write that
gosh.
down.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna
Yes.
have to. That's a whole other episode.
Well, family trees are really interesting.
They are, and I think
Yes,
it's super
yes,
interesting because yeah, we talk about moving now, but for many people all over the world and up until today, it's emigrating or it's immigrating. It's not
right,
you're not moving. You're literally emigrating
right.
to a new country, a new town, a new whatever it is, and so much of our everyone's history has that, no matter who you are. So it's a really fascinating topic.
It's yes,
Yeah,
yeah. It's always happened.
it's always
We just
happened.
did.
People have
It's
always
always
emigrated,
happened.
moved. Yeah,
Right. We just didn't have the technology to follow them as well as we do now, and we
yeah,
didn't. And now we have so much incredible bias that it's
right.
outrageous.
Which,
Because
yeah,
if the people with all the biases would sit down for half a second and figure out where they came from, they'd either plots or they would change their minds.
right.
That's
I
why
know.
that's in my. I think we should. That's why I. Okay. Pie in the sky. I totally get this. Don't think I'm naive or stupid, but wouldn't it be great if we could all just be universally swabbed and we would all find out exactly. And then I'm
Where's
telling
that?
you,
Is that going to cause more horror we don't see yet? I don't know. I can't tell.
Exactly, but the optimist in me, see, because I'm a
Yeah.
perennial optimist, would be you get squad and you go, oh, for God's sakes, I should keep my mouth shut now.
Well,
But
yeah.
that's because I'm rational.
Well, yeah, and I think this is why I'm against, borders or citizenship. I mean, it's kind of doesn't make sense, does it, when you think about people who have, I mean, or animals that are also always moving. They have to. They have to follow the herd. They have to
They
follow
have
the
to follow
food.
the
I mean,
food.
humans have to do that too, but because of agriculture, it changed, and then borders happened. Anyway, that's a whole other episode, but
It's a very big deal, but that's a very big conversation. But living at a distance is a little bit easier now because of like
and
planes, trains,
trains and
automobiles,
automobiles.
electric cars, auto
Yeah.
driving cars. I don't know if that's
Oh,
a good thing.
please, can we not have those? Those are
Yes,
stupid.
I don't know,
I
bullet
digress.
trains and social media.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's
So
a huge deal.
I think so too. So to end, I mean, you and I have a pretty decent relationship at a distance, would you say?
From a distance, yes,
Distance.
we do.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, we do.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Oh yes, are you clear?
Because
Are you getting confirmation?
no, I'm not getting confirmation. I just
Oh, okay.
wanted to make sure because it's hard for me to live away, and I'm
Oh
always
heck yeah,
questioning it. And it's
yeah.
just it's important to me that we have a good relationship, even if we were close proximity. But it's even more important to me because we're at a distance.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I
Mhm.
first of all, I'd like to say that I appreciate the fact that you're at a distance for your own sense of self and what you've decided is the right place for you to be. That can change, of course,
Yeah.
and the way you want to conduct your life. And secondly, we can have healthy relationships even if we're at a distance. The deal is about almost anything in life is how intentional you're going to be with that. And
Right.
also having grace. So knowing that just because you're not, let's say, talking to a person as often as you want to, doesn't mean you're not appreciate them, talking about them when they're not there, remembering them, all
Hmm.
those things.
Right.
So yeah, and
Exactly.
what's so freaking amazing about text messaging and Instagram and all these other avenues is if I'm thinking about something in the moment, I can communicate that really quickly,
Right.
and I think that's amazing. So I would
Yeah.
say to those people in my age and above, don't be afraid of technology. Use it, connect with it, get to know it, find a young person who might know more than you do. And yeah, don't, I know too many older people that are saying, I don't want to deal with that. It's too complicated. It's not complicated.
No, look at you. You're wearing headphones and you have a mic in front of your face. So you get it. You're
There we
doing it.
go. Trying.
No, you're not trying. You're doing.
Doing it. I'm doing it.
You're doing
Yeah,
it.
I'm doing it.